Do you know how much food you need so that you can feed your family for a year? Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we have something special for you. This video is for Weston, who reached out to us in the Contact Us page on our website, but for some reason there's some software glitch and it won't let me email him back. So if there's a few of you out there that it's not working for, it's because I haven't received it. So don't give up on me, try again. Now, thanks to my family and all the big muscles that hauled all this stuff up from our basement storage room, because we all know that food is best when it's stored in a cool, dry, dark location. And so thank you, John, for hauling all of this up.
Absolutely.
And you can tell this is all dusty, and this is our real food supply, right? Now, what we're going to talk about today is the food supply for one person.
Right.
And it varies depending on the needs and preferences and allergies that your family has.
Right, exactly. Sometimes people think there's this exact list that we have to follow. That is the farthest from the truth that it could be, because this is very flexible and you need to tailor this to what your needs are. You need to make sure that you get the calories and the nutrients that you want. But if you don't want wheat, you can do more rice, you can do more oats. You just make this work for you so that you get what you need, but that it fits your needs. And
one of the things that we would strongly encourage is that you always have legumes, unless there's just some reason why you can't store beans, because every single one of the recommendations recommends that you have beans. And the reason why is because if you put beans and a grain together, like rice or wheat, so if you have the beans over a bowl of rice, or if you have it inside of a tortilla, it creates a complete protein. And that is really important, because there's not meat in this storage. No. So now we're going to talk about dry goods. Dry goods are, our definition of it are goods that are low in moisture, less than 10%, and low in fat, that have a really long shelf life. That's what we're looking at today. And we seriously recommend that you have a short-term food supply, which are your canned goods and your boxed meals and whatever like that you just normally keep on your pantry shelf, to supplement this.
Right, and also, if you have the ability to grow some of your own food, whether it's a few pots or one garden bed or a large garden, whatever it is, that can make such a huge difference in both the quality of the food and what you can actually produce year to year.
Right, but these are your basic foundational calories. This is meant to keep you alive, right? Until we can come up with a better plan, until things return to normal. So let's talk, we're going to compare several different plans a little bit. We won't get really in depth into them, but if you click the card in the corner of the video, it will take you to one of the posts that we have written that compares these plans along with some others, and kind of talks about how much you should store according to these different experts. So we're just going to look at a few of them today. First of all, we're going to talk about the American Civil Defense Association. They have something called the Tactica Academy, and in one of those chapters, they outline what they recommend you store for food. Now, this is based on a 2,700 calorie diet. And you think about this and you think of 2,700 calories, that's a lot of calories. But during some type of an emergency situation, it is possible you're going to be doing a lot more manual labor, like growing your garden or clearing debris, whatever. And so if you go on the higher side, then maybe your food storage will last 14 months instead of 12 months. But if you go on the lower side, you might run out at 8 months. And then what are you going to do, right? And that's the other big factor, How long do we really need enough food for? Right. And that's another very personal decision.
Sure.
So the American Civil Defense Association recommends a total of 480 pounds of grain and 120 pounds of soybean. Now, they recommend the wheat and the corn, and that's all that they do. Now, they also say if you have an infant, you should store 240 pounds of powdered milk. That's a lot of powdered milk. And so, this is just for you to kind of look at and then make your own plan. Now, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of the most renowned experts in food storage because their members have been storing it for so long. And what they recommend is 25 pounds of grain and 5 pounds of beans a month. Okay, now if you calculate that out, that's 300 pounds of grain for a year and 60 pounds of beans, which if you only stored wheat and you only stored beans, that would give you 3/4 of a loaf of bread a day and 1 cup of cooked beans. Can you see how that is? That's survival rations.
Yeah, that's not much.
That's survival rations.
That's not much.
But their intent is that they also tell you that you should have at least a 90-day supply of foods that you eat every day.
Right.
Right? Those canned goods that are on your shelf, just what you keep in your pantry. So then you put the two of those together, and then you can be okay. Now, they recommend it month to month, and then they recommend a 90-day supply. So you kind of have to think this through in your mind. For us, we like to have a really nice stocked pantry with all of the foods that we eat on a regular basis, in addition to this, and a huge garden.
Yeah, and in our case, we actually probably eat a lot more than that 60 pounds of beans that they recommend. We like beans in our diet, so, we bump that up for us. Others may not, but again, it's very individual.
Yeah, we're probably storing 120 pounds of beans per person, I would say.
I would guess, yeah.
But beans are also something that we eat 3 or 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. At least John and Ben, they love their beans. And sometimes I don't love them as much when they love their beans. but they eat just a whole lot of beans. And so we rotate through that, right? And that's part of this. You can package it up and set it away. And if you've packaged it right, it'll last for 30 years in a cool, dry, dark location. Temperature really matters.
But really, more ideal would be to be rotating through it more often. But the intent here is that you could set that aside. If that's what you wanted to do, is set that aside. It's probably not the ideal method, but it would work, and it will last that long.
Yeah. Now, BYU actually has an approach to food storage plan that's also on that post. But for the most part, for them, it's about 417 pounds of grains and veggies, and that includes the legumes in there, the way that they have calculated it. So, and then there's one other place that I want to talk about, food assets. I don't know anything about them other than they have a really cool food storage calculator. And this is what they recommend: 375 pounds of grain and 75 pounds of beans. And then they go through and do all the different things like the milk and all that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But so if you just want a visual representation, this is about what you would need in the grain department. And this in the beans. This is sugar, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this is our spice bucket. Oh, why don't you talk to them about the spice bucket?
Okay, yeah. And this was Mama's idea, to just have these buckets that they're just full of spices and, baking powder, different things that you need for baking. This is kind of what you would use every day for seasoning things, leavening things.
Because beans aren't any good if they don't have spices.
Yeah, you got to have something to zip them up a little bit. So, that's what this bucket is all about.
So, and we've got a video on just this spice bucket and what are in these spice buckets. But I wanted to make sure that I had the spices that I need. If I end up having to just use this, I don't want to go to my cupboard and find out that I'm missing something. And so this was just another way to do something. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's talk about this for a second. So these are packaged in buckets. That's not the only way to do food storage. Now, some of these, like this one, comes from Dave's Wheat, and we actually buy these already packaged. He's a local farmer, and we buy them already done in the buckets, and he's packaged them for us. Yeah. We have other ones that we have put Mylar bags in them, and then we fill them up with the dry good, and then we seal the Mylar bag and we seal it in the bucket. And the reason why we do that is to protect them from rodents. Do you want to show them that bucket?
Yeah.
This is kind of fun because, wait, show them the lid first. Okay.
This bucket's been around. And it emphasizes that we recycle all this. This all gets used over and over again, and it's really fun, especially when you can see the kids when they were 3 or 4 years old, they were helping right on there. It's just so dang cute. But you can see these have been around. We reuse these over and over again, and just that's how we roll.
So these right here are peas. There's peas and legumes in this bucket, and we've packaged them in the smaller ones. The Mylar has to be protected from mice, because we have seen so many people who have lost their food storage because it's in Mylar bags and it wasn't protected from rodents. So make sure that you put it in some secondary container. Now, quite frankly, mice could chew through a bucket. Depending on your circumstances, you could put it in a metal barrel if you wanted to. If you really have a problem with mice, I'd take a metal garbage can and you could put Mylar bags of all sizes in it. And what the Mylar does is it protects it, right? It's a protective environment. You put an oxygen absorber in there, it gets rid of all the oxygen, which kills the bugs or the eggs, and it also prevents the dry good from oxidizing during storage and significantly increases that shelf life. So oxygen absorbers, where's my, oh, here they are. Okay, you can get them, like these are from Wallaby bags, and I like Wallaby because for the big buckets, they actually, let me see if I can really do this. I should have opened this in advance. I wasn't really planning on it. Okay, but what they do is they package a few in the bag at a time. And so for the 25, or for the 5-gallon Mylar buckets, they're each individually packaged. They're 2,000 or 2,500 cc oxygen absorbers. But these are good. These are the smaller ones. These are 300. They're good for a gallon or less. But these are navy beans that I packed back in 2008. And all I did was repurpose a plastic bottle. It has to have a good airtight lid. This isn't the best, but this is free. All it's going to cost you is the cost of an oxygen absorber. So look at the post. I'll leave a link to the post in the card in the corner and in the description of the video. Always look at the descriptions, because we'll have different links in there that might be valuable to you. Now, mason jars also make a fantastic way to store your food. You can see the oxygen absorber in the bottom here, and it actually sealed the top. But in this little protective environment, it's protected from everything except for light. And so this is a great way to go. You can vacuum seal this, or you can use an oxygen absorber. This is great. But if you live in earthquake country, you've got to protect these bottles, because it would be really sad to lose all of your stored goods.
Right.
But if the smaller quantities are better for a lot of people. Like we've had this huge family with 11 kids for all these years, so buckets was the only way to go. But now we're moving a little bit more toward smaller packaging.
Yeah.
So the tool. Okay. So John can open buckets without this, right? I can't. And I have bought some of the plastic ones before, and I totally break them. Mm-hmm. Like this little thing just breaks right off. So we purchased a commercial one. I'll leave a link for one of these. It doesn't really matter to me which one you get, but don't put a plastic one with your food storage thinking that it's gonna work, because I break them a lot. Maybe that's just me. But the metal ones, that's what I would totally go for. Okay, give us just a minute, because we've got a lot more to talk about, but we're gonna switch this out and show you what a year's supply in cans would look like.
Now let's take a look at another approach to doing your food storage. This would be the number 10 cans. If this is a great way for you to go, then you should do this. We like a mix, but this is an excellent way to go as well. And you can see all these cans come from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They make these available. They don't have any profit incentives, so these are actually probably the best cost you can get anywhere. And we don't have any affiliation with them. We do have affiliations with Augustin Farms and some others, but we recommend these to get you started, because it's the least expensive way for you to get this job done. These cases here kind of give you a visual representation of what a year's supply of food would look like for one person. Typically that would involve 2 boxes of beans, and then probably 12 boxes of grains. And that's going to vary some, because For example, rolled oats. A can of rolled oats isn't going to have nearly as many calories in it as a can of wheat. Or a can of beans or rice. And so this is going to vary some, as it does on the buckets as well. You know, some things are not as dense, but that just gives you some idea of what it might look like if you were doing like wheat, rice, and beans. This number of cases would be about what you would need for one person for a year.
And you notice that, like, okay, everybody's different. We have a lot of rolled oats because we eat rolled oats as much as we eat beans.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah.
in all kinds of different ways. And so that's what we want to incorporate into our diet. You also notice there's no wheat here. Now, you can absolutely get your wheat in cans. We have some wheat that we have stored in cans, but because we make most of our bread from scratch, we store the wheat in the buckets from the farmer that we get it from.
Right.
But there's also lots of instant mashed potatoes. But look at this, you do not need a wheat grinder for any of this. Sometimes people always say, well, I can't do food storage because I don't have a wheat grinder. None of this needs a wheat grinder. There's plenty of food that you can purchase that's really fast to make, right? The instant mashed potato flakes, okay, the can is lighter, right? So it doesn't have as many calories as a can of beans, but wow, it is quick and easy to make, especially in a survival type situation.
Right.
The dehydrated the dehydrated onions and carrots, that's an important nutritional component, right? The carrots add vitamins that you just desperately need, and the onions are fantastic for flavoring different things and adding some different nutrition. So
and variety. I mean, sometimes just that variety helps to break things up and make them.
The spice bucket.
Yeah, it goes in that same category with the spice bucket. It helps things taste better and gives you a variety.
And these are super easy to store. So underneath a twin size bed, you can store 12 cases of the number 10 cans like this. In the box, it just makes this fantastic little place where you know that the person sleeping on that bed has a year's supply of food or close to it. If you put oats and potatoes in there, it's not gonna work. But if you've only put beans and rice, then you're gonna have enough for a year's supply. But
we call that food insurance, and we also call it
hunger
a place where the kids can't stuff their stuff to clean their room. So it serves two callings.
It's true. So hopefully, Weston, we have answered your question. There's a few other things that we think are really important besides the dry goods to store with your food supply. One of them is the can opener.
Absolutely. And you need to have several good can openers and get good quality ones, because they're going to open a lot of cans. And if you get to a point where you can't open cans, you've got some problems.
I know that there's other ways, very violent ways to open up a can, but seriously, and we haven't tried this one yet. This is one of the ones that we just bought after the shelf life of white flour video that we did, because we were having so many issues with the can. So hopefully this one's gonna work really well, because actually some of you guys recommended it. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
A few other things that I strongly recommend that you store. This is not a long-term storage item, but you should have 2 gallons of fat per person for a year's supply. And this isn't quite 2 gallons. These aren't actually gallons. But you're going to need to rotate through that because they will go rancid in storage, but at least 2 gallons. And I know some of you think, well, I've never gone through a gallon in a year my whole life, but when you're using processed foods a lot and you're not cooking at home and you're not cooking with dried goods, you're going to go through a lot less. But nutritionally, your body needs fat, and if it's not getting it in any other way, that's really important. Salt. We recommend 10 pounds per person. And there's a video that we did on how to store salt, and we have a bucket that's similar to the spice bucket that I like to store the salt in the original containers because it's so handy, right? To just be able to have it, so when you pull it out of the bucket, you're not having to mess with anything. And I mean, this is a forever storage thing. Another thing is baking soda. So we clean house with vinegar and baking soda a lot, but baking soda in food storage goes a long way, and this has a forever shelf life as long as you protect it from moisture. So it's something that...
So many uses for this, for baking soda. Tons of uses. We've got, I think, a video or a post on that also that talks about all the different things. So having this is great, and Colleen mentioned the vinegar. And how much did they say you needed for vinegar?
Just
half a gallon a year.
Like,
And we use so much more than that. We use it in cooking, we use it in cleaning, and again, this has just a lot of great uses, so having some of that on hand is important.
And I do like to store, I like to buy it at Costco. You can go other places, but I like it when it comes in this box for storage, because when you put the vinegar on, in contact with the ground, or the concrete, I have had it leak and make a mess, like this white fuzzy stuff. So you've got to make sure you protect it, and I found that if it stays in this cardboard box, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Right, and it has a really good shelf life. Now, one of the other things that is highly recommended is vitamin C. And this, so you could buy a large container that has enough for one vitamin C supplement per person per day. For however long, right? This is just an estimate. This is a year. You might only want to do it for 2 months, and you might want to do it for 2 years. That's completely up to you and your
Personal
family.
decisions, yeah.
How long you want to do it. But we have a video on vitamin supplements, or on how long things like this will store. So you might want to check that out too. But it is actually best to buy ascorbic acid, which I know isn't vitamin C, but that's a debate for another time. Ascorbic acid in a bulk. And then these are just old vitamin containers that we put it in, because it came in a big package. And so I wanted to put it in something smaller so that I could use it. But this has a forever shelf life. And so I would really recommend that you look into doing some of that, just because calories are important. And I would devise your food storage or design it around calories, making sure that you get enough calories. And then the next step is to make sure that you get enough nutrients, right? Because you want diversity. If all you have is beans, you just don't have enough diversity in your food storage. So we want to have these different things so that we've got a difference in nutrition.
Yep, and if I can just get on my soapbox again for just another moment, a garden. These are garden seeds, and however you want to do your garden seeds is great. I mean, if you want to save your own seeds, do them in little envelopes. If you want to get a kit like this, some of these work better than others, but somehow have the ability to garden and to grow some of your own food. It just provides so much security and so many nutrients.
Yeah, and this is great for the foundation for a garden, right? Because if you have these basic grains and then you can supplement it with fresh fruits and vegetables, wow, that is a great way to be able to have a good survival food supply.
And it stretches what you have. So if you've got a supply of canned goods or whatever, however you have your vegetables, but then you use that garden for the summer, spring, summer, and fall to the extent you can, then you've just extended the life of the other foods that you have.
Yeah. And I recognize gardening, having a big garden isn't realistic for everybody,
right.
But this is a great way to make sure that you have full tummies until you can come up with another plan. Now, sugar, that's one thing that we didn't talk about. It's really funny because, so we don't eat a lot of sugar in our daily diets, especially now that I can't eat chocolate anymore. I've been forbidden, but not by him.
That's terrible.
I know, it's terrible. But sugar, the recommendation is anywhere from 60 to 75 pounds per person per year. Now, sugar will store forever. And when you think about it, that is a lot of sugar. One of the reasons why I think it's okay to store that much sugar per person, even though we're not eating it, is we preserve a lot of our own food. We can make jams and jellies, and even when you bottle peaches or different types of fruit,
right.
Just a little bit of sugar in that can really help with home preservation, and it makes the coloring look better, the flavor a little bit better. So honey is also something that you could store, because it usually will outlast its container. Powdered milk. What we wanted to mention, we know that Tactica had advised 240 pounds if you have an infant. So for us, we use very little milk in our diet. That's just the way that we are. And if your family drinks several gallons of milk a week, you're gonna wanna make sure that you store a lot more powdered milk than our family would. And that it's best to store non-fat, because remember, fat will go rancid in storage over time. So you'll get a longer shelf life with a non-fat version of powdered milk. But that's also super individual, right? You want to count those calories when you're looking at providing like a 2,000 calorie diet, 2,000 per day calorie diet for somebody like me. You want to make sure that you're counting those calories and make sure that we have enough calories.
Right. So kind of the real bottom line here is there's no hard and fast guidelines. This is for you to design to meet your family's needs, what you like, what you prefer, making sure that you get the nutrients and the calories that you need, but you decide what's going to work best for you, and it's different for everyone.
It is, it is. So Weston, hopefully I didn't overwhelm you with all of this information, but I wanted to make sure that we really kind of gave you options, right? Because you don't have to do it. You could do your entire food storage in just these peat plastic bottles, right? And it could be so incredibly inexpensive. Just make sure you use the oxygen absorbers. You can do the freeze, thaw, freeze method and get rid of the bugs that may be in here, but it doesn't take care of the oxidation process that occurs during storage that something like these oxygen absorbers will take care of. You could do it all in Mylar bags. You could do it all in glass jars. It's just as individual as you are, and there's not one right way and one wrong way.
So now for the question of the day. What ideas do you have, and what do you do to create your long-term supply? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.